Welcome back. We're back out at the workshop. This week I just laid some colour on this Victory paint job. We've done the American Eagle, flying the American flag in the middle of the tank. This is metal flake base, candy apple red over the top and some fades on the side. Just letting it dry off for a few days. We're going to rub it back and give it another coat of clear flow coat. Now this is the fender I was talking about last episode. I've added 70mm to the centre of the fender all the way through. So it's brought out 70mm wider. So it's a very big fender. Retained the stock tail light bezel, and then a recessed number plate. I put it recessed into the fender because there's plenty of room here to run a number plate, so I've recessed it in, and we're going to run a Arlen Ness license plate bracket around the edge just to keep it nice and tidy. So this is Roth flake with candy apple red over the top, some fades, spectacular in the sun. Okay. Back to the fender and the fuel tank. I think today we'll put some beads up them. If I put the beads in the middle, I'm going to run a bead down the middle of the fender, bead down the middle of the tank to make a match. And once we've done that, we can start making the base and finish welding it. I've done a bit more metal work on it, shaped a little bit more, but we'll put the bead in because I'm sure after we finish the bead, we want to do a little bit more metal work on it. So I've done a bit more shaping. I'm pretty happy with the center of the guard. We've still got to do the edges, curl them round. I'm going to use another die in the pull max for that, but first of all I want to put a bead down the centre of the mudguard, like the old spare tyre covers that they use for fenders and the old bobbers. So I'm going to run that bead there, and I'll do one down the centre of the tank to match. I've this is just a homemade beading tool. It does like a 3/4 inch bead down the centre. A lot of these dies I just make out of mild steel. I've got bucket loads of them for different things I've made, so they don't have to be out of tool steel. If you're only using them for 1 or 2 jobs, you can just use mild steel, shape it with a grinder, give it a bit of a clean up, and away you go. So I'm just going to put a tape guide down here, down the centre of the guard. I'll just check that we can get the guard all the way through. As the guard gets more rounder, it gets harder to fit in the machine. That is one advantage of an English wheel. You've got a lot of room around it. You know, you can go this way, that way. The pull max is sort of tied in by the head of it, but it's still very deep. You can get a big panel in there. Now here's when I'm pinstriping or painting or trying to find the centre of a fender. I just lay a bit of tape on, especially if I've got a tape measure. I've always got something to draw with, so I just mark it on that end, on this side. Pull the tape back until it meets with this mark here, and there's the centre. No numbers involved. And then if your metal's that same width all the way along, you can just simply put it on. Simply put on that way. Put it there, put it there. There's your centre again. Move to about here. Push it down. Mark there, roll it around, centre to centre. There you go. One more time, a little bit more. It's probably pulled in a little bit more on the very end. So there's your centres. So I'm going to run a tape guide down there, and that'll help me stay on track when I'm putting the bead down the centre.
Make my way, burning
first pass. Go through one more time, a little bit lower. So that's starting to take shape now. The more times I run that through, the smoother these lines will get. So I'll run it through a few more times, get that nice and smooth, and then we'll have a go at the tank. I want to bring them around. I haven't stretched these edges at all. I've only stretched the middle of the fender. So when you get a piece of metal and you stretch the middle and don't touch the sides are going to hold it all into shape. If you stretch the whole piece, it'll just go to one big shape. But we're not stretching and shrinking the edges. You get that nice dome like a mud guard. So I'll run that through a few more times, but we'll start on the tank now. Give you a look at that. Just going to check that I can get into the machine. I might have to turn it around. So the only way we can get the tank in there is this way. So I'm going to turn the dies around. And I'm just going to have to get a torch in there so I can see, because it gets very dark when it gets to the end. So we'll just turn these dies around and I'll find a light and we'll put it in there so I can see what I'm doing, hopefully. An issue, I've had this side of the die squared off. When it goes in the tank, it's going to hit, so I'm going to trim that off. Woohoo! And then the fuel cap will be up here. I'll hand form this out to go towards the fuel cap. Beautiful. Okay, so we've done most of the shaping on that. I've got to weld it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a pattern for the base now, and where for the mount underneath so it's hidden, I'm going to use the same tool and put a bead through the bottom of the tank and run a piece of 3/4 steel across the tank with 2 inserts for bolts, and that'll give us a nice flush mount to the frame. So I'll just make a mount like this with a hole drilled in it, and I'll mount it there, but I want it flush mounted. So this same die I'll use on the bottom of the tank, and that'll give us a nice flush mount. Okay, we'll make a piece of cardboard, just set the tank on top. Quite simple. The sides of this tank are a little distorted at places, but if I make the base nice and straight, as I fit it, I can manipulate that when I weld it. Also, I've got to think of where to put the fuel bung on this. Sometimes I'll just use an aftermarket tab or even a Harley tank, but I keep all my damaged tanks and keep the insert out of the tank, and I trim them out of the old tanks and weld them into the new tanks. It's easy way. Otherwise, I'll use just a fitting from NZ or a fittings company, and a cool old school tap. So I'll just roughly cut the template out, and then what I'm going to do, so it is perfectly the same on both sides, I'm going to fold it down the centre so I get it pretty close. Pretty good with that. And then before I do the final trim, because when I put the bead through here, it's going to pull in and make this a little smaller. So this is I've made it a little bit bigger. So as it pulls in, we've still got a little bit of steel to play with. Okay, so we've got our pattern. This is going to be the mount, so I'll fabricate that mount, and I might even show you how I make the mounts. So I'll have that all ready to go next episode. In the meantime, I've had a lot of inquiries about my paintings, and I'll give you a personal tour of a couple and explain the background of some of the paintings I've done. Some are pretty interesting. Let's go and have a look. Okay, so I did a number of paintings over the years. Lots actually. I was doing 1 or 2 a month. This one here is a version of Easy Rider Australian style. So we've got instead of the Captain America bike, we've got a Captain Australia bike. And here, this guy is Eureka flagged out. Eureka flag t-shirt, Eureka flag belt, Eureka flag vest, Eureka flag bandana, paint job. And sure enough, in the sky, the Eureka flag in the stars and clouds, Eureka flag tied to the sissy bar. He's riding a panted. I can't believe the detail I used to go to in these paintings. I guess I still do, but you know, I've had this one hanging in my tattoo studio, and every now and then I look up at it and think, man, look at the detail in that. I've got nuts and bolts and springs and clamps. Crazy. So that's the Captain Australia bike. Then we've got Billy. So similar paint job and similar style bike to the one in Easy Rider, but it's an Evo updated. He's got the cowboy hat on. Well, we'll call that the Aussie slouch hat, eh? This is my Australian version of the Easy Rider. Okay, so I thought for this one I've done the guy and the girl on the bike, rigid shovel head, eagle soaring in the sky, looking up at the eagle. Now I thought that'd be great. Now I thought for the sun to be behind it, it needed a shadow. So I started thinking about how the shadow would work from underneath the bike. Now I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do a day and night painting? So I changed the idea, and I thought I'll do a reflection of a shadow of the bike, but I'll turn it into a night scene with the bike. Now this presented a very big problem. To do the bike on that way up in the painting, I had to paint the other side of the engine and motorcycle. So you'll notice this side's got the primary, the left hand side of the engine. This side has got the right hand side of the engine. The carby, pushrod tubes, exhausts. So although it looks like almost like a symmetrical painting, it's nowhere near symmetrical when you get down and look at it. I had to have the chain drive on one side, gearbox, primary. So It proved a bit difficult to do, but it's one of my favourite paintings. So all these are going to be up on my website. I've kept a hell of a lot to myself. I've got a lot hanging in my house and my art studio, but a lot of these have been in storage for almost 20 years. So I love getting them out and having a look at them, but I end up with paintings stacked all over the place. And sometimes I rotate them around in the house, but I'd rather see someone else getting some enjoyment out of it. And you know, whoever buys them, I can tell them a story behind each painting. And I think it's interesting. You know, I've been a biker all my life, and a lot of the paintings depict what I've been through. And you know, from the style of bikes we rode to the parties to the good times, mostly the good times. Not many. I don't like painting the bad times. Okay. Have a great week. See you next episode.